We're about to start this next panel. We're very excited to have Dr. Adam Rusch from the Intersect, as well as Joel Telpner from IO and Nico Cerny from the Cardano Foundation. And with that, Adam, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much. So, as Kula said, I'm Adam Rusch. I'm a teaching assistant professor at the University of Illinois, also a member of the Intersect Board of Directors. Joining me is Joel Telpner, Chief Legal Officer of IOHK, and Nico Cerny, the governance lead at Cardano Foundation, both members of the Interim Constitutional Committee for their respective organizations. So it's great to have you here today to take a look back. All three of us served on the Civics Committee and Constitution Drafting Working Group leading up to our conventions to put this Constitution on chain. So just a little chance to talk about the Constitution, where it came from, how we've been interacting with it as a community, and where we're going in the future, hopefully. So yeah. So with that, I guess I'll just sort of start off with just a few questions for discussion. But if anybody wants any follow-up, feel free to shoot up a hand, and we can take crowd participation as well. Always love to hear from everyone who wants to be involved. So I guess the first question I'll offer to you, Joel, and then Nico, you can also weigh in, is what were the core principles and motivations behind drafting the Cardano Constitution, and how did it aim to address the challenges of decentralized governance in a blockchain like Cardano?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me here. I appreciate it very much. When we went from the origins of the Cardano ecosystem, where there were three entities that originally pushed it forward for a number of years. Basically, those three entities were primarily responsible for keeping the blockchain going, for deciding what improvements were needed for the blockchain, and for doing everything you need to do as if they were a corporation and the blockchain was their sole product. But we realized that that wasn't sustainable, and we wanted to move this over to the community and ultimately say, all of you that want to be involved in this blockchain ecosystem, that hold data, or want to build on Cardano, want to support Cardano, you're really the ones that should be empowered to make the decisions. It's your protocol, it's your baby, and you should decide what its future looks like. Now, in going from a somewhat centralized governance approach to a decentralized one of the things that we all talked about was, well, how do you just open this up to everybody? How do you do this in a way that doesn't turn this into chaos? And so we thought about, all right, can we create some guardrails, some constitutional principles, some guidelines for the community so that when they come together, they have a framework and a basis for coming together so that we didn't go from three entities to total chaos. And so the Constitution at the end of the day was a coalescence by the community of some core principles, some core tenets, some core guardrails that they said, hey, let's start here. These are the parameters that we all want to use as we govern going forward. And by the way, we knew that what those guardrails, parameters, tenets were could change over time as Cardano continued to mature and as the market changed, as technology changed. But we needed some type of foundational structure to go forward with a community-led governance process.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I mean, Joel is spot on, right? For me, and I think what was really important to everyone that was part of the drafting committee of the Constitution, the interim, and also now the Constitution that we have on chain, is that it really had to capture this spirit of what Cardano is, right? And that is a challenge because Cardano is not the same for everyone, right? Some people from all around the world see and use Cardano in different ways. But the most important thing then for the process was that we tried to capture as much of these different inputs and these different perspectives as possible, right? And try to distill that into this one document that we now have, the Cardano Constitution. And I think this made the biggest difference in the world, that we had all these workshops, that we had all these discussions online. It wasn't easy, right? Because I know many of you here in the audience and also watching online, you've joined those and you made that possible, right? And there were people, of course, that then all reviewed that and tried to capture this into the text. And then the convention in Argentina, where many things still changed, right? But I think what we have right now is really all of the Cardano community's input in one document, and it's fantastic.
63 global workshops.
And one thing I do want to note, while you both made some wonderful points and talked about bringing the community together to pull forward a community governance model, there still was community governance in the SPOs even before the Constitution. I will remind you of when the founding entities had a hard fork they wanted to put forward one time. There was possibly a bug that may have had possibly catastrophic implications if anything went wrong, and there was a bit of a SPO revolt for a couple of weeks where they refused to push the updates. How do you feel that having a constitution where these things are laid out, the process are laid out, would relieve any sort of tensions between the developers in things like the founding entities and the other stakeholders that have to run the software?
Yeah, I mean, right, and Adam, you're completely right that the SPOs in general, they have still, in a way, this kind of veto, right, when it comes to installing what kind, or deciding what kind of software they want to run, if they decide if they want to upgrade to a new node version, right? And that existed since we had, since Shelley, right, since we have SPOs that, and stake pools that run and produce blocks. So for me, what the Constitution then did basically is try to put all of this kind of informal rules that we currently have into this kind of document, and to create this framework around, I sometimes like to call the Constitution this rule book, and I know it's not completely the right way to approach it, but yeah.
So SPOs still have that role. The difference is that they don't have that power solely. There are certain things like protocol and parameter changes where the SPOs need to be aligned and they need to vote to approve it. But through our DREP process now, we have other voices at the table so that the community as a whole now has a means through DREPs to express their views on a certain type of protocol change, so that the SPOs are forced to listen to the community in a way they didn't have to in the past. Also, because the Constitution has guardrails within it, there are certain parameters that we came to consensus and agreed upon that should not change without a super high majority amending the Constitution itself. And so we talked about and agreed to which parameter changes are open to the community to change relatively easily, and those which really are the fundamental guardrails of the Cardano blockchain that can be changed, but where the process of changing that is a much more rigorous one.
And just to quickly add on that, I mean, I think the beautiful thing about the Constitution and also Cardano's governance model is that we can change everything, yes. Right? We can always update things based on new challenges that arise or on new circumstances that appear, right? This is the beauty of Cardano's governance model. While it is difficult to change some things, like the Constitution, right? It requires 75% approval from the DREPs. Then the Constitutional Committee needs to approve it as well, the constitutionality of it, of course. It is possible to change it. And yeah, this is for me one of the most important things for Cardano in general, because we cannot stand still, right? We need to evolve, we need to change as well.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Nico. And you used the analogy of a rule book, and I've been fond of using the analogy of the Cardano Constitution, and I think constitutions in general as a pact. It's a pact that is made between the members of this community of the past, of the present, and of the future. Because the members of the past said, we're going to make these things, we're going to set them down in a document that's going to be very difficult to change. And it's very difficult to change according to our protocol. And those of us in the present uphold that by running the protocol, and so that those who come after us in the future know what they're getting into. And we can always change it. It's just that we have selectively decided to have higher thresholds of agreement. We have to build greater consensus before we change what those who have come before us have, in their wisdom put forward. And if the times have changed, then we should be able to, figure out what do we need now? What are we going to do? So I think that it's a good system, and it's, no system obviously is perfect, but it's as good as we've come up with so far by seeing what others have done. So moving on. Joel, you mentioned how when we added with the Constitution and with the new protocol, we added DREPs. I think one of the innovative parts of Cardano's governance system is that when CIP 1694 launched, the DREPs are explicitly separate from SPOs. Now, that doesn't mean that an SPO can't be a DREP. That was always an option. An SPO can become a DREP and say to their delegators, if you want to be a DREP, if you want me to be your DREP, if you still want me to represent you, you can choose me. But the protocol never took all of the SPO's delegation and made them their DREP by default. They had to go and earn that trust again. How do you think that decision of decentralizing the power and allowing new people to come in help to, help to speak to Cardano's core principles of decentralization?
Well, it allows participation on steroids. If you look at other blockchain protocols, we're not the only one that provides some form of voting rights to their participants. But I would say that there's no blockchain that has gone to the full level of voting participation that we have. But one of the things, if you look across all blockchains that do allow some form of voting, is there's not a lot of participation. A lot of the things that people are asked to vote on are fairly technical. They're complicated. And so we thought about, well, we want everybody to have a voice, but we also want to have people be able to rely on people that have deep technology, that have the expertise, that have the ability to really look deeply into a proposal and say, you know what, this is good or this is not good for whatever reason. And so by creating this concept of DREPs, your elected representatives, this allows people that have little or even no technology experience to still participate in the voting process by finding that DREP that they're comfortable with, whose views and policies they agree with, and saying, please vote on my behalf. And by the way, if I don't like you, I can always take back my delegation and appoint somebody else. But the beauty of our DREP process was, again, I think it magnified the amount of participation in the community because it gave people a way to either be very active or be passive, but even being passive to still vote.
Yeah, Joel, as always, is spot on. But one of the things when it comes to DREPs, right, and what really amazed me after Chang and after also the Plum and hard fork is just the sheer number of community participants that decided to register as DREPs.
Over 500, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. It's really astonishing, right? And it's such a diverse group of DREPs, right? Doesn't matter if you're from Japan, from Europe, the US even, right? We even see councils coming together. And one thing I think that is sometimes not misunderstood, but maybe not seen as that important is, yeah, the DREPs vote on the governance actions, right? They have definitely, that is their responsibility. They vote on all the different governance action types. But if you really think about the true power, where the true power lies in our system is with the ADA holders, because they delegate their voting power to their representative. And if, for whatever reason, right, they disagree, or there's another DREP that is better suited to whatever they feel like is important, they can at all times redelegate. Right? It's a permissionless system where you as the ADA holder always have the final decision about how you want to use your stake. And I mean, you can even choose not to use it at all. Right? This is also one of the things that is enshrined in the Constitution, this freedom for the ADA holders to decide how they want to participate.
That's great. And you also mentioned how the ADA holders get to vote on proposals, and that leads right into my next topic, which I was going to bring up, the Constitutional Committee, and the separation we have between the Constitutional Committee, the SPOs, and the DREPs. For anyone who's new to this, the SPOs, the first governing body that we had of Cardano, they are the technical experts who keep the Cardano nodes running. So SPOs produce blocks, and they are also called upon to vote on governance actions that have technical ramifications, basically. So that's pretty much when SPOs vote, if it's either a technical ramification or if it's something that has to do with like selecting the Constitutional Committee. And then the DREPs do the bulk of the voting as representatives of the ADA holders. So it's like, do you want to spend money from the Treasury? Do you want to set a parameter for something? Then the DREPs weigh in, and they are supposed to be basically either using their expertise because they were chosen for their expertise by the ADA holders, or consulting with their delegators and saying, hey, I want to find out who are the best people in the community to advise me on this. How can we come to this best decision? But then the Constitutional Committee, they don't have a choice on how they vote in terms of what they want to see happen. They have to vote on different principles, and that principle is it in the Constitution? So as members of the Constitutional Committee, the Interim Constitutional Committee, what has been your experience in that in terms of coming across different governance actions where maybe you thought it wasn't a good idea, but you had to make a decision like, is this constitutional or not? And where do you feel like, how do you feel like that's affected you as voting members of Cardano's governance bodies?
Well, first I just want to say that if you compare what other blockchains have tried to do, again, there are various experiments in giving token holders the right to vote, but there is no blockchain protocol that went so far as creating a robust constitution and then creating the equivalent of a Supreme Court to make sure that what collectively we do doesn't violate that constitution. So you're right, the Constitutional Committee's role is to make sure that an on-chain governance action before it goes forward is not inconsistent with the provisions of the Constitution. Whether they politically like it, whether they think it's a good or bad idea, is not relevant. Their job is to say, is this constitutional? If so, it must go forward. The only reason we can say it can't go forward is if it explicitly doesn't satisfy the constitutional requirements. Now, from my perspective, I guess, because I'm a lawyer, that notion doesn't bother me that I may have had to approve things that I thought were dumb ideas. What was more interesting to me were provisions in the Constitution that we came out of the convention thinking, oh, we know exactly what this means. And then when we got to actual debating provisions in the process of approving governance actions, seeing the debates that arose around provisions that we thought were clear that actually maybe aren't so clear after all was the most interesting process. And that, when we talk about, and I know we're going to talk about the pathway forward and what we do next, we got a lot of data out of the deliberations of the Interim Constitutional Committee and how they interpreted the Constitution and where they had challenges in interpreting the Constitution.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the things that you will only really discover about the document that you use to assess things with, and right, that is the Constitution. The Constitutional Committee uses that document to assess if a governance action aligns with the principles, the guardrails defined in it. And some of these things you can only really discover when you actually have governance actions that you need to assess, right? It's super easy and nice to think about all the different possibilities while drafting it during the workshops. I mean, so many hours were spent on just thinking about every little possibility, what kind of governance action could be presented. But then reality hits and it's very different. But that's fine, right? There are challenges and there are sometimes provisions that might not be completely clear. But the good thing is, with the Constitutional Committee, the Interim Constitutional Committee, all of these members provided rationales with their votes, right? And what we can do as a community, or even as anybody can do it, they can look at the rationales and analyze where are these tensions. And I think we have a pretty good understanding now, after almost 1 year of assessing governance actions from a constitutional perspective, of where there are some things that that cause confusion or that are maybe leave too much room for interpretation. But then again, right, you also don't want to be completely specific and leave no room for interpretation.
I mean, even the U.S. Constitution has a lot of amendments.
Yeah. So looking ahead then, I guess just sort of starting with the idea of clarification, from the governance actions that you've seen come through, what are some areas of the Constitution that you feel like you would like to have some clarification on? hearing from the ADA holders and their DREPs of possible amendments of maybe clarify some of the intent of the community so that if you're making a constitutional decision, you have a better idea of what they're looking for.
Yeah, so personally, what I think would maybe add a little bit of more clarity or would make it easier, because actually I can talk about one example. So currently, when someone proposes a governance action on chain, right, you provide usually, or you must provide metadata that explains the rationale behind your governance action. So if you want to do a treasury withdrawal, do a parameter change, you need to add information about why this change is important, present data, and all of these things. And there was quite a few governance, or there were, I think, 2 governance actions, let's not say a few, that didn't use immutable metadata. So what does that mean, right? It means that if in one point in the future someone breaks the link between the content and the link that was provided, that information is lost. And that is a very challenging thing, because in the Constitutional Committee, we need to assess a governance action based on the current information that is live. And if there's not, and in the future, it would be important that whoever in the community or even outside wants to actually review a governance action, they should be able to access that information, right? And if we lose that, it's quite challenging. So one of the things that I would personally think about implementing maybe in a future constitution is to make that immutable metadata requirement, just for the long-term health of the Cardano governance system.
I think for anybody that attended the governance retrospective that we had this week, one of the biggest areas of tension comes through when we talk about the budget and treasury withdrawal process. And it's coming out in a couple ways. We have in the Constitution different types of what we call governance actions. And so governance action that requires a change to the protocol goes through a relatively rigorous process. But we also have what are called info actions, which are basically a way for people to use the constitutional process as a town hall to put information up on the blockchain saying, hey, we would like to do this. What do you think about this? We'd like to express our views on things. And when we look at the budget and treasury process, it is a mixture of info actions and governance actions. And that mixture has created a lot of confusion and unnecessary complexity that I think needs to be addressed as we go back and look in greater detail at the Constitution. But I just want to mention one thing also, because we're talking about the Constitution, but a lot of provisions in the Constitution actually expect and assume that the community is going to come together and on an off-chain basis agree on certain approaches, certain policies, certain processes, certain procedures that implement the intent of the Constitution. So I think some of the things we're seeing that are creating tensions at the constitutional level are not necessarily things that need to cause us to have to amend the Constitution. It's telling us also that some of the off-chain governance processes need to be matured and need to be stood up in a way that supports the provisions and requirements of the Constitution itself.
Yeah, I think that's essential. I think that, you know, we look at how we have our Cardano improvement proposals that recommend, I would say technical. Not all Cardano improvement proposals are technical, though, because some define how you spell and capitalize ADA. But, you know, others, but for the most part, they're technical guidelines. But we kicked around with Mr. Adam Dean. I have talked with him a lot about kicking around the idea of some sort of government improvement proposal. And maybe that would be a way that we could help to have some definitions that are like the bylaws of our constitutional system that would help to get us there when people are looking to form some order in the space as it rises to the constitutional level.
Yeah, and just to add on what Joel said about adding some sort of off-chain processes, or that there are missing off-chain processes, institutions that take care of certain procedures. I think this is completely right, because the Cardano Constitution as it stands today and as it's written is it leaves a lot of room for people to, how do I say that correctly, to really take care of some of these processes. Think about incentives. Think about creating code of conducts, right? This doesn't need to be spelled out in detail in the Constitution. And it's very easy to, I mean, we've not been in Cardano governance now for a year, right? In September 1st will be the 1-year anniversary of the Chang hard fork. And it's very easy, I think, after just not even a year to immediately think about adding more complexity, adding more bureaucracy into the Constitution. But I think what we have right now really leaves so much room for these processes, for these even institutions to form outside of the, I mean, yeah, of course, outside of the Constitution, and to give the Constitution more life in a way.
And that was intentional. It was intentional to make sure that the community was always had all kinds of ways to participate and to interface with our ecosystem and our community. And the Constitution was intended, again, to provide ultimate guardrails and guidelines. It was not intended to preclude people from participating in governance in all of the creative ways that we can come up with together.
Thank you so much. And so we only have a few minutes left, so I just want to close with some final words from each of you. If there are people out there who want to get involved with Cardano governance, what would you recommend as a first step to get up to speed, and then how to get involved as contributing members of the community?
That's a tough question. I mean, one of the things that I think everyone that really wants to understand Cardano governance should do is, of course, read the Constitution, and then also read CIP 1694, because while it is a technical specification, as Adam mentioned, right, it's a Cardano improvement proposal, it is also written in a way, I think, that is very easily understandable. And then where I definitely would go as well, depending on if you want to become a DREP or if you want to maybe join in the future constitutional committee, is go to the Intersect website, their knowledge base. It's very extensive. We also have a dedicated governance page on cardano.org/governance that also links to all of these great resources. IOG has great blog posts about governance. Yeah, there's a lot of information. But one of the things I think that is that you should not underestimate also is the great community content that was created around governance. So there is, I think many grants were last year were paid out for people to produce governance content, and that's, I think you can find all of that in the Intersect knowledge base.
Yeah, the only thing I can add to that is that, look, because we're decentralized, there's no single door to knock on, which makes it hard. But you outlined a lot of the, I think, the best starting points. I mean, Intersect is a members-based organization. It's made up of members of the Cardano community. And as Adam mentioned, there's a civics committee whose role is to help suggest and nurture governance and improvements to governance. It's a great place to start. So many of the resources about the Constitution you can find through the Intersect website, and also Cardano.org, which has a lot of amazing resources. And of course, the folks from all the founding entities are still actively involved. We're not playing the role we played in the past. We don't hold keys anymore. We can't effect any changes on the protocol. We can only raise our hand and suggest. But the three founding entities have been on this journey for a long time, and so reach out to people you know at the Cardano Foundation, at Emergo, at IOG, and you'll find people that would be delighted to talk to you about the Constitution and governance of Cardano and give you avenues to participate in.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll plug the resources I know about. First, I'll say if you need a pocket Constitution, go on the get out your smartphone from your pocket, go on the Intersect knowledge base, and you can find the Cardano Constitution right there. Second, if you're looking to learn more about becoming an SPO, I believe the IOG Discord has an SPO technical channel where you can go and learn some more and interact with people there. If you want to learn about being a DREP, I'd say find a DREP who's active in the space, delegate to them, and start giving them suggestions and asking them about, how you can get active with, delegation decisions, because I think that DREPs are always looking to have engagement. And so if you're engaging with them, it's going to build both of you up, and everybody wins. It's a decentralized ecosystem, many doors to knock on.
One thing I'll just add to that is that as we're doing this governance retrospective, we're going to continue to encourage the community to form various working groups and to get involved in some of the off-chain governance activities. And so there's a huge opportunity to participate at that level if you're interested.
Yeah, and the final thing then also, Constitutional Committee, there will be on Saturday a workshop for the Cardano Constitutional Committee credentials. So it'll be led by Mike Hornan. So if you go on the Rare Evo website, click on the agenda, click on the workshops portion, you can find more information about it there. So we'd love to see you there as well to learn about the Constitutional Committee credentials and how to act as a Constitutional Committee member. And with that, I'll turn it over back to the team for the next program. But thank you all so much for being here. Joel, Nico, I really appreciate you being here. I'm Adam Rusch. Thank you all.